Hi everyone, delonewolf here and welcome back to EVE Talk, your weekly look at the market in EVE Online. We didn't get a lot of news when it comes to EVE Online, if I'm not mistaken. A couple of ships are getting some buffs. Are they like the flagships or some of the Concord ships? It's something like that. Not exactly ships that I fly very often, so I don't have the details on this, and I haven't gone and to take a look at on CC about these changes, but it's really small stuff so far, so we will see if bigger announcements are coming down the pipeline. On the other hand, it is summertime. We are now in the month of July, and that's also something that is really seasonal in EVE Online and for CCP. The summer is when the CCPers take a lot of vacation. I mean, it is Iceland, and they get those super dark winters, but also very bright summers, and so they try to take advantage of that as much as possible. So I honestly don't expect too many shocking developments to be announced during the summer. Maybe in the fall we will see how all of that develops. Of course, I'm still going at pace, playing every day, doing a little bit of exploration, a little bit of mining as well, although I lost my compression spot, so perhaps we'll look for another spot to do our mining, or we'll focus a little bit more on exploration. We will see how that develops as well. Before we get started, quick look of course at the New Eden store. Let's see what's happening over here. A couple of bundles front and center. Now it's the Guardian Starline Majestic skins that are shown as hot, so these are back, I think. The Panther Iceblade Gorilla skins are still marked as new, but I'm not spotting any sales, at least not in the skins. Let's see what's happening in the services. Everything is just regular as always, or as almost always. CCP does do sales in the New Eden store from time to time as well. I do think that they're offering some special bundles on the account management page, but all right, that means that we get to move on to the market. As always, we'll start with some plex and stuff, and that's coming in at 210. Like that. All right, and let's get started here with the price of plex that is continuing its ascent quite a pace. Very impressive looking chart, almost getting back to the 2.6 million average price on the chart right here, and you can see in GTA 4.4 the sellers are up to 2.75 million. It's only a couple of them. We are going for 2.8 million very quickly, and it's 2.5 million for the buyers. We've got one seller at 265, but I think that will get snagged up very quickly, or it may be, yeah, it is in competition with the Perimeter Tranquility Trading Tower, where we are still below 2.7 million, but you know, not by that much anymore. Supplies here are pretty decent though, so we still have to chuck through quite a bit of perimeter supply before we actually get that to 7 to 8 million, but the upward trend is clearly here. Buyers in GTA and in the Tranquility Trading Tower are now above 2.5 million. Main culprit on this, I'm going to say that all of that talk about lower active players and all of that hype is actually especially on the subreddit. We're seeing quite a little bit of activity trying to analyze what's happening to the game, also, you know, pointing fingers, you could say. But I'm going to say that a lot of it is actually, you know, criticism from the standpoint of those posters. All right, this is my problem, this is why I feel like I'm not really wanting to put more time into EVE Online, sometimes at the moment, sometimes definitively, although I think, you know, everyone knows that you can only take breaks in EVE Online. You'll be back soon, you'll be back at one point, something is going to bring you back, but yeah, this is probably limiting new supply of plex, and that is providing upwards pressure, which would of course be very good news for players that have invested, let's say, below the 2.3 million mark a couple of months ago. I myself have a decent chunk of plex, but that value is going up quite substantially, and yeah, my read on that is that supplies are down because of the summer slump, everything together of course, and this does become an opportunity, so we are going to have to start to look at signs for a top, great sell opportunities and things like that. We're not there yet. I think there's still quite a bit of stuff that has to move in the Tranquility Trading Tower, but we're also seeing some daily volumes go down a little bit towards the 1 million mark, and even below that on a couple of days. I think that's indeed indicating that supply going down, and yeah, it's a little bit harder now to get those 500 plex every month and things like that. It's becoming more expensive, so the inflationary spiral is happening. I myself would still be waiting on that key announcement at least before we start to look for an actual top, because those reserve banks in NullSec, I think, are still just accumulating ISK at the moment, and that could really be a big chunk of ISK coming into the game all of a sudden could have a very big impact on the market. But for now, those that have invested a couple of months ago are looking at a pretty good potential plex trade. For the multiple pilot train certificate, not showing the same thing. Right here we're going down, although the volumes are, you could say, abysmal, less than 25 a day, and a couple of days back here with just 7 of them being traded. This again showing that lower activity, probably the lower supply as well, but we still need to chug through a couple in the Tranquility Trading Tower that are selling 1.3 to 1.35 billion. In JITA though, it's 1.4 billion, and buyers are still at the 1.2 billion mark, trying to take advantage of what's happening. If you can buy at 1.2, you are indeed, in all likeliness, making a very good purchase. But yeah, keep in mind, JITA 4.4, it's already at the 1.4 billion mark, which is right here, same top as here in November, and Plex still has a ways to go before reaching that 2.7 million range. Next up, the skill extractors, in line with Plex in all likeliness, climbing very quickly back to 300 million. Today's average above 300 million ISK. We're talking 298 million for the sellers in the Tranquility Trading Tower, 315 in the JITA 4.4 station, and buyers are up to 295 million. Upwards pressure, very impressive recovery here as well, from below 260 to almost 300 million ISK. That's 40 million profit in 3 months potentially. So again, those that have bought 3-4 months ago are looking quite good. The impact on the skill injectors, while all of this has been happening, skill injectors have actually continued to go down, and only at the tail end last week started to maybe form a bit of a bottom. So let's take a look. Still hovering very flat at the 570 million mark, just above that on the chart. 583 for the sellers, 560 million for the buyers. So here still have a lot more inertia, a lot more hesitation, despite 2,500 trades every single day. That's actually quite a lot, I would say, for these large skill injectors. And then we get the small skill injectors that are showing the first signs of forming a real bottom price right here at the 120 million mark, probably very close to that, this 125, as we are going back up to 120 for the sellers. Actually, no, not seeing a little bit of pressure still, and then 112 million for the buyers. Now, what is noticeable is that the fresh supply in the Tranquility Trading Tower is drying up, right? And whoever still brought this in the last 24 hours said, I'm gonna try and sell for 121. I think we'll chug through this supply right here again, and then 122 million in JITA 4.4 itself is where we are starting. So a little bit of a push pressure, first signs of a turnaround in the small skill injectors, but the large skill injectors very flat despite all that upwards pressure from the plex / extractor part of the item, showing that interest in skill points is pretty low in EVE Online at the moment. I mean, CCP is very generous with the skill points. We again got like another week or so of login rewards. Just come in, shoot a couple of NPCs, and get free skill points. And there's, I would say, relatively little reason to get a lot of skill points. I mean, I myself am training for those Edencom ships with the buff there and the Vorton projectors, but overall, those are still, up to a paddle ship. They're not that important either. It's very niche. It's also Omega only, if I'm not mistaken, and so as a result, overall, there's not really that much hype around getting skill points to get some things done, which, it can be seen as a bad thing or as a good thing. It does show that, in my opinion, accessibility of skill points has gone up quite substantially, which is very good for new players, but of course for veteran players it's like, all right, what's happening here? A big part of the draw when I started playing EVE Online was that passive skill training, which would allow me to basically plan ahead. Okay, now I'm getting into a cruiser, getting into a battle cruiser, or getting into a mining barge for the first time, finally getting into my Hulk. All of those were very memorable milestones where I planned ahead and made sure I got the ISK to buy the ship, got everything ready, and then I could fly out there in my new ship. All of that has really been compressed a lot, I would say mostly through these items, of course, these skill injectors, and they have that drawback of, in my opinion, cutting down the lifespan of the experience in EVE Online, but of course it increases accessibility, and this is the balance that CCP has to decide on, of course, how they want to handle EVE Online and the development for all of that type of stuff. But I would say that for players that have been around for like a decade and more at the moment, there's really very little need to say, all right, I need skill points for this reason or that reason. You're mostly established already, and as a result, that's a big gap between veteran players and new players that may hold new players back. All right, I'm never going to catch up to these guys. Well, it matters less and less for the old players, and CCP is opening up the spigots for new players. You know, they can catch up into activities very quickly. It's just probably part of the strategy. Next up, we've got the daily alpha injectors. These are going down as well for the first time, I would say. In a little bit, it's looking like we're well below 40 million and potentially here to stay. Although the first seller is only here at 39.9, most are just above 40 million. Buyers coming in at 38 to 36 million for most, we gotta be honest. Yeah, but this is actually another 10 of them for this buy price, like 4 hours ago. This could actually put a stop to this decline and bring us back up above 40 million once the sellers start to dominate again a little bit more. So interesting, very wavy pattern in the daily alpha injectors with that bottom, never really willing to go below 37.5, although right here about 10 days ago we did get an average price of 35 million, but overall that 40 million is defendable for the daily alpha injectors, although it's quite volatile in how it goes above that and below that. So we'll see how it's either the lower supply that could course a bit of an upswing, or it's the lower demand because of lower activity that could cause a little bit of a downswing. I do think, I'll be honest here, if you're like a new player or someone that's looking at, do I want to try EVE Online, and then you're going to the EVE Online subreddit at the moment, that's going to be rather depressing, and you're in all likeliness going to decide not to start your trial now. You'd probably wait for another reason, maybe a big war or something like that, or a patch or a trailer that hypes you up before you decide to jump in. And then of course we have that summer slump reasons. I do think they play a major part, even for myself. I mean, I'm gonna have to go back to the office this month, 1 day a week. That definitely changes the whole psychology. I'm not every single day at home all day long. I'll be meeting my colleagues again. You know, in all likeliness, there's potential plans and things like that can develop from this. So the whole, you know, psychology of this summer is definitely very unique as well, and potentially causing this downtrend due to lower demand and lower alpha activity. We'll keep an eye on that, of course. And finally, I think, yeah, we just have the hypercores left that are betting on inflation, it looks like. I thought this pullback would have a little bit more teeth, but we bounced right back off the 280,000 mark. A couple of sellers in Tranquility Trading Tower at 273,000, but most here in Jita, and apparently dominating the trade at 282,000 for the sellers. Buyers coming in at 265, forced up quite a little bit after also that increase right here. Could be the same story, less supply because of lower activity. But another part of it, especially this big jump right here, could be a little bit of a bet from the market on inflation with those keys for the Nullsec reserve banks. Could be very interesting. I am curious, just from a market perspective, not really from a participation perspective, but I'm really curious to see what CCP has planned for those special keys. Next up, we've got the minerals at 14 minutes. Like that. Let's get started on this one. Lower activity and of course the double whammy from the April boost, where the introduction of the industry changes have really caused a rush on production. I think that yeah, I saw this in a comment somewhere as well. It's a very bad time now for new industries to try and get into industry, because there's just so much stuff out there ready in the hangars, everything from probably frigates to battleships to maybe maybe even capital and super capital ships that are ready to be dumped on the market at any sign of a recovery, that at the moment you're basically producing at a loss on almost everything. So this is the result, the consequence of this industry change. And yeah, there we get this massive drop off. For titanium it's even worse because the need for titanium has gone down substantially with the industry changes, and it's actually been able to hold on quite nicely to a 4.5 ISK range, but first few sellers, no, that's actually 14 jumps out. So sellers now have 467, buyers at 445, the first one. So, you know, we're still at that 4.5 ISK range, but that pressure is very clearly here. And yeah, here 1.4 billion units. We haven't seen that in a while. I think in the titanium range, hundreds of millions are definitely doable. But yeah, if there's one activity that I think tends to be pretty persistent because that becomes like a little bit of a habit, it would be high-sec mining. You're relatively safe, you find your niche, and then you know, you just have like a regular schedule that can pretty easily be followed. I do think it's a very difficult time then for now for these prices to be maintained, especially on that lower demand and lower activity. So let's see if it shines through on the others. No, all right, I'm a little bit surprised here. Look at that, pyrite 5-day moving average above 20-day moving average. Average prices actually seeing a little bit of upwards pressure here all of a sudden. 19.24, so getting back towards 20 ISK for the sellers, 17.43 for the buyers. I'm reading this chart as slight upwards pressure. So maybe there's still something happening in nullsec where a couple of big groups are in need of a lot of minerals, and there's still you know, some increased industry activities or maintained industry activities happening over there. In high-sec, I'm not seeing it. You know, frigates to cruisers, I'm not exactly seeing it, but maybe in the big stuff, there may still be some power plays being done in nullsec. Next up, we've got Mexalon. That's more in line with what I expected. So 5-day moving average pulling away from the 20-day moving average, a little bit more downwards pressure on this one, heading for 60 ISK on average. We're talking 63 for the sellers and 58.5 for the buyers. 60 is right in the middle of that. So that may be the price where Mexalon is going to settle at the moment. Maybe also a little bit of surprise. Why would pyrite see a little bit of an uptick, whereas Mexalon, the nullsec primary bottleneck from high-sec, I would say, is still going down in price. Well, it could be a lot, of course. Mexalon has been the main focus for this whole year and even longer as your primary target for high-sec. If there's anything you were going to actually also build stocks on, it would definitely be Mexalon. Looking at these prices, normal historical price 75, we start the year at 100 ISK, we go up to 125, 150, and then the April boost brought us to 200 ISK, showing, you know, how violent that increased demand was, especially compared to titanium that was decently muted. Yeah, Mexalon very much 1-year high point, probably close to an all-time high at 200 ISK, maybe not at like the very start of the game, but you know, historically speaking, last decade or so, it's bound to be one of the highest prices. So this is really, I do think, a mineral that has a unique place or a primary place in nullsec production as well. After that, we move to low sec. Here is Isogen, and breaking the 60 ISK barrier. Alright, my expectation is finally starting to really show through here. This is counter to the summer trend, I would say, but 62.5 now for the sellers, 60 ISK for the buyers. We still have down here at 63 ISK, 253 million units. That's still part of that problem, if you want to call it that, of some stocks that are definitely remaining. Over here at 70, we also have 45 million units in the wait, but that's at 8 hours. But yeah, quite a few bets have been placed, I would say, on these increased prices, and it's slowly coming through with new supplies. 1 million units, 2 million units, and that's pretty much what's able to be made in Isogen. I think very much in line with what you would expect, active supply and active demand. Now, we know that there was a big 1.8 billion unit sell order like half a year ago that has really kept us in check for this whole November to April period. Is this the end of those stocks? I personally am not exactly sure, but this is still a 250 million unit sell order. this could be the last of it. I'm not sure, or close to. I mean, there's always stocks out there, but really the bulk of it that is slowly being chewed through. Well, this increase in price is very sharp for a low period activity. So I would say that this is very much bringing us closer and closer to an active supply demand situation. There's clearly still some stocks out there, but this is what I was expecting that to eventually happen. And so if you followed the advice there to, keep hold of your isogen, don't sell on any, on small increases. 50 definitely still feels like it's probably low, although now we gotta take a quick look at that. Sellers for Mexelon 63, sellers for isogen 62.5. They are coming together, and logic would dictate that eventually isogen should overtake Mexelon, of course, because it has to be mined in HiSec. On active supply demand, it should be more expensive, and it's slowly happening. Although on a downwards move as well from Mexelon, but we may return to isogen becoming more expensive than Mexelon in the upcoming weeks and months. This one will be a little bit of a problem. I'm not sure, this could take quite a while. If you look at this as well, 1 million, 2 million regular active supplies, 250 million units is going to take a little bit of time for the market to chew through that, but it is slowly happening. I can't give you guys an expected price or anything like that, but yeah, above Mexelon, I do think should be a possibility, and there it is. Finally, we are chewing through that. Next up, we've got the Noxium chart that's a little bit more in line with what's happening in active demand and supply. And you could say, well, this is also from low sec. Why is this not going up? Well, that's because Noxium already has gone through all of its reserves. 1,250 to 60 for the sellers, 1,130 for the buyers. And here you can see the supplies. Most of them are below 1 million units, 1 to 1.3 million for a couple. And then what do we see? Well, we get 4 million and another 4 million here. These are the big volumes, not 250 million units. So we don't have those massive stocks that can still be brought into the market and that have kept the price in check. No, we are now in the most expensive mineral, Tech 1 mineral in the game, Noxium, a low sec sourced mineral that is currently going down on the summer slump and the end, of course, of the rush due to the industry changes. This is what you would expect from an active supply demand standpoint. Isogen, well, it's recovering because we are finally getting through those reserves. Another possibility, I'll quickly mention that, is that you really should be careful with being too early on this. What could also be happening is that they're going even smarter with the strategy and going with a single sell order of maybe slightly higher volumes at a price point they're happy for. So this at 63 ISK is actually like decently aggressive, I would say. But it's possible that there's even more of them out there that they'll then dump at 73, at 75, etc. So this is absolutely absolutely possible that there's more stocks out there for isogen, and also that part of it has disappeared due to inactivity, right? If someone is like, it's probably better for me to just wait a couple of months, and at the moment, right, if you're in the industry, you've got those big mineral stocks, you might as well say, I'll take a summer break. We'll be back after the summer. By then, maybe more of those stocks will have gone through, and the isogen price might be in a much better place. So being too early in isogen is definitely the threat, I would say, for the best price. But yeah, Noxium 1500. So if you expect Mexelon, isogen to be above Mexelon, but still below Noxium, well, there's definitely a very large range of possibilities as to where isogen may end up in active demand supply. Then we get the null-sec minerals. Here is Zydrine, very, very flat, very stable. At 870 for the sellers and 810 for the buyers. And then we've got Megasite. That's still going just above, just below the 600 ISK price range at the moment. 628 for the sellers and 590 for the first buyer. Going down to 573 and then 557 pretty quickly. But overall, yeah, that 600 average seems to be very easily maintained. And this is something that's I would say rather unique to these Nelsec minerals is that it's bigger groups, far more organized groups that have the possibility of getting relatively safe mining and thus very stable supplies. At the same time, all of those minerals have to be brought into the JITA market from Nelsec, and so they have a sort of monopoly situation where the sellers can dictate the price, and that I think increases the stability, whereas for Noxium, for instance, and for Isogen you get a lot more volatility because you gotta go into that risky low sec space, and as a result, there's potential disruptions which could cause increased prices, and then a lot more, I would say, general trends that can influence this market more quickly, because you don't necessarily have a full monopoly. It is possible, and at some point I'm hoping to also explore that a little bit. You can have like high sec players that also try their hand at getting some Noxium, getting some Isogen. For Nelsec, it's very much in the hands of those big groups, and that increases stability. Then finally we've got Morphite, our Tech 2 mineral that's continuing to test the highs. Actually went to 100,000 ISK here about a week ago, so we're talking 97,300 for the sellers, 90,000 for the first buyer. Super expensive Morphite, pretty much 10x on my historical investment line. Below 10,000 ISK is where I would buy Morphite to try and sell at a profit. Well, if I had done that and held on up to this point, that would have been worth quite a lot. But of course I have been actively trading a little bit more than that. But yeah, Morphite extremely expensive, as Tech 1 industry is not really that needed. There's big stocks out there. In all likeliness, you need that cheap Tech 1 as well, can be incentivizing a lot of Tech 2 production at the moment, which means we need a lot of Morphite. Next up, the PI market, but first a quick drink. There we go, and PI at 26.30. Let's see, on lower activity, I'm afraid that should not be very good news, but here we go. Broadcast nodes, advanced PI materials, more need for these materials in the new industry changes does mean that these can apparently defend their current price range. 165 million, down a little bit from last week, but still 1.6 million for the buyers, so the demand is there for the broadcast nodes. Then we've got construction blocks, all right, making their way back to 7,000 ISK, but from a one-year low point of less than 6k. That is not something to write home about. 7,300 for the sellers, 6.6 for the buyers. So that's like just a potentially even a dead cat bounce here, but a normal correction in the price from a one-year low point. Consumer electronics though, sort of confirming that trend. In the summer slump, it means just less demand. If there's one thing that's still easy to produce, it is PI, of course. Part of a daily login makes that very easy, and so we're oversupplied by quite a bit. 6,200 for the sellers, 5.6 for the buyers. Yeah, that is just not a great place. Historically speaking, I think 12,500 is a normal price for consumer electronics. Coolant's probably doing a little bit better for the same reason as the advanced PI materials. You need some extra fuel blocks in the industry receipts, and you also have, of course, more transmutations, reactions, that's it, for the new industry changes, and so that gave a little bit more of a bottom that Coolants, for instance, can defend. We're talking 8,500 for the sellers and 8,000 ISK for the buyers. Cryoprotectant Solutions, yeah, starting to lose more of its feathers. Was able to defend 100,000 ISK quite easily. We've got these spikes indicating that they're tied to implants, but now we are slowly breaking down on the lack of demand. 98,000 for the sellers. They're still trying that 100k, but look at the buyers, they're just dropping off 78,000. A very big margin between sellers and buyers here. And if you want to be ready for an introduction of implants, then this does feel like the time to buy. Get as close as possible to 80k. Make sure you can still buy more in the future, but this does really start to make a lot of sense. Enriched uranium tied to fuel, so doing a little bit better, actually jumping up to 12.5k here about 10 days ago, which is its historical normal average price. We're back down to 11,000 for the sellers and 10,000 for the buyers, but again, tied to fuels, you get slightly more robust demand than most of the other stuff. Integrity response drones, a little bit of pressure, but still well above 1.5 million, 1.6 for the sellers, and getting to 1.7 very quickly, 1.52 for the buyers, so decently strong and steady supply demand here as well. Mechanical parts, tied to fuel blocks, still struggling a little bit. 7,000, 750, 800 for most sellers, 6,000 is for the buyers. Potential reason, mechanical parts are super common, you can make that on barren planets, so I do think that here it may just be a little bit too much supply for one of the easiest products tied to fuels to make. Then we get nanites, well below 5,000 disk at this point, 5.3 for the sellers, 4.6 for the buyers. To get these averages, I think that does show that lack of demand, this summer slump that is really, causing a lot of people to say, you know what, I'm just gonna dump it. 4.6, that's fine. In order to get this average on the chart and have these sellers and these buyers, that means that most people are just, desperate to get rid of their nanites and they're willing to sell to these buyers. Nano factories still above 750, a little bit of upward pressure in fact in the last couple of days, heading for 800,000 disks for the sellers, just below 700 for the buyers. Not that great, but considering this chart, decently stable at least. Organic motor applicators, again jumping up a little bit away from the 750,000, so 800,000 for the sellers, 755 for the buyers. Again showing that for these advanced PI materials we're doing a little bit better. Maybe a little bit, this is also needed in structures, so maybe a little bit of, post-war, potentially post-war. I mean, it's still going on, but a little bit of like structures being put up in ASIC is definitely potentially part of what's happening here. Then we've got our recursive computing modules. Here a little bit of pressure. Are we below a million? Well, almost 1.1 for the sellers, but 900,000 disks for the buyers. So eventually, of course, the lack of demand could really show through the entire market. Robotics, one year low point at 55,000 disks. I don't think I've ever seen robotics this low. 58,000 for the sellers, 52 for the buyers. My historical perspective price on robotics, 100,000 disks, so that's very bad. Self-harmonizing power cores slowly seeing more pressure as well. We're talking 1.6 still though for the sellers, 1.4 for the buyers. It's again, it's a demand problem that's causing the pressure on the price at the moment. Sterile conduits, well above a million, yeah. 1.1 almost for the sellers, just below a million though for the buyers. They are dropping off slowly. Ukami superconductors tied to implants, not testing new lows just yet. 69,000 for the sellers, 63 for the buyers. Same story I would say as with the cryoprotectant solutions. It's probably okay to buy at the moment if you want to be ready for a potential CCP implant announcement, but make sure that you don't buy too many of them, that you can still buy if the supply demand situation keeps getting worse. And for the summertime it's definitely possible, with where mainframes also turning the corner, heading back for 1.5 million, 1.6 for the sellers, 1.5 for the buyers. We've seen that a couple of times at this point. After that, advanced moon materials, 32.45. Let's take a look at these. So pretty important for Tech 2 production. Let's start here with the carbonites. Crystalline carbonite for Galente production, continuing to see a little bit of pressure, staying above 175, 192 for the sellers and 181 for the buyers. Still pretty expensive, but obviously not the top price anymore, which could put bit of pressure on Tech 2 ship prices. And I think here it's that same story. It's the summer slump that's starting to show up here, which means less demand, and of course potentially we get that perfect storm with industry. Although in Tech 2 I think demand should still be pretty good, but yeah, it's just fewer players actively playing, fewer players also doing the industry, and so you get demand dropping off. Whereas advanced moon material supplies probably have some reserves as well, some inertia, and potentially are still pretty easy to maintain by some of the groups that actually produce them. Then we've got for Caldari the titanium carbide also dropping off now below 2 on the disc. Is that the case? Yeah, 196 for the sellers, 191 for the buyers. So the good times, the great times for these products may actually be over on, again, lower demand, lower activity. Then for the Minmatar, we've got Fernite carbide also back to 150, so fully recovering. 161 still for the sellers, 160 for the first buyer. But clearly again here, the lack of demand is showing. Tungsten carbide for Amar dropping back below 2 on the disc as well. 183 in fact for the sellers, 177 for the buyers. We've not seen that in a couple of months, but clear pressure, less demand for the carbide materials. Then our metamaterials, here is photonic for Galente. These are doing okay, which to me means that the interest in Tech 2, which Morphite is clearly hinting at, is still very strong and is keeping us basically in range. Photonic metamaterials, we're talking 12.5, 12.6 for the sellers, 12.3 for the buyers, yeah, around 12,500 disc. Pretty much average, even slightly below average on this full 1 year chart. Then we've got Caldari, where are you? Here we go. Non-linear metamaterials actually going up in price a little bit towards the high end of its range at 25,000, 24,800 for the sellers, 23,000 for the buyers, but definitely moving within that range and is still at a reasonable historical price. Then for Minmatar, it's Plasmonic. There we go, still at 20k, also pretty much flat here. 24,000 now for the sellers, 19,800 for the buyers, and this average price seems quite alright. And then terahertz for Amar back at 17.5, pretty average here as well. So my read on this is that Tech 2 is still clearly something that is wanted and needed, and that is being done in the game quite a little bit. I basically think those massive reserves of Tech 1 chips make a part of Tech 2 production decently cheap and thus very interesting. So there's an investment in there, but the lower activity is finally starting to show up and is pushing price of the carbides down, for instance, on lower demand, which should be bad news for most of these other advanced mode materials, because these are probably pretty steadily supplied as well, but should see more demand drops. And so here, for instance, fermionic condensate in the last month clearly going down, and bars well below 60k, yeah, at 59,000 here, pressure is mounting. Then we've got ferrogel flat at 35,000 and bars at 32,000, so potentially here we also have a little bit of a gap that's opening up. Then we've got the fulleриdes, continued pressure as well, back well below 1,000 disc, which from my perspective is its normal price. 820 for the buyers and 681 for 820 for the sellers and 681 for the buyers. Again, a bit of a gap opening up here. Ceramic fibers actually trying to maintain, but still well below 10k. 9.5 for the buyers, a little bit better there. Nano transistors back above 5,000 disc. That's bit of a surprise, but the response, first seller 4.9 right back in here, and buyers though 4.8, a little bit of demand for nano transistors. I don't think it'll last very long though. We'll see next week. Phenolic composites, there is the pressure, although I think there's more need of it now in the industry changes. Eventually the lack of demand back to 1,500 towards 1,500 for the buyers, 1,650 for the sellers. Here clearly the pressure is here, and then the ceramic fibers that also has a premium with the announcement of industry changes is also seeing a little bit of pressure at the tail end. 440 for the sellers, 430 for the buyers. Still a premium on the first half of the year, but clearly starting to suffer the lack of demand. It is clearly a part of the market at the moment, which is not necessarily a good thing for those that are looking to actually invest in Tech 2 or trade in Tech 2, I should say, and just buy and sell quickly, which is what I've been doing. Right now it could be hard to get those really high prices. But let's take a look at Tech 2 next. 3810. Like that. And for this one, I'm going to, of course, also open up my Bios holdings, so all the trades that I've been doing, because I've been doing a little bit more trading, and in fact I've done a couple. We've got the Ishtar trade, bought at 206 and then sold for 221. This is always after taxes, so 15 million profit on that one. And then another, the Osprey Navy issue actually triggered, where I managed to buy that, and I'll quickly show that here on since we're not checking this category. But yeah, I managed to buy at 63 million including costs, still probably able to do so. And then I sold at 75 million including costs, but you're probably still able to do right now as well. So we get this big spread in Osprey Navy issue, a little bit of faction warfare stuff that is actually causing some volatility, and I managed to make that trade another 12 million in profit. And anything else that's new, I don't think, but those were the two trades that I did manage to make last week on the sell side of things. I think for the Ishtar I bought it before last week. But yeah, let's get started with tick 2. Here is the Basilisk. We always should start with the chart. Honestly, here holding on to a pretty high average, right? I would say that 230 seems to be the average price range, and we're still above that, so definitely not the place to try and buy. Although, must be said here again, 250 million almost for the sellers, 206 for the buyers. That's a very, very large margin. So if you're able to pick one up, you're probably able to make a trade happen. The one thing that you should worry about then is to spook the market, right? Don't try to buy 10 basilisks and then try to sell all of them. You're gonna crash things down substantially, but it is possible to do a sell-buy trade with a spread like this. Then we've got the Cerberus. That one is seeing a little bit more pressure. That is actually pretty good news if you're looking to buy. 230 for the sellers, 212 for the buyers. Let's see if we can get a 210 or something like that to show up on the chart right down here. So we're pretty much buying at this previous bottom. So this could be another one of these head and shoulders patterns where we're now testing that new low. I would say, yeah, 212, 210. If you want to actively trade right now, the Cerberus actually looks to be in a position where you can buy. Then we've got the Guardian. Let's see, do I have a Guardian? I thought I had one. Yeah, here we go. Bought for 185.436 million. I'm not sure why I went all in on that one, but this is after taxes again. Currently selling for 200 million. I could probably have a little bit of a profit on this one, and buyers at 179 is probably going to be close to, or maybe even a little bit below what I bought at. So here again, clearly seeing the pressure on the price. So I bought a Guardian. I could probably sell at a small profit, and that is maybe going to be the pattern for now, because again, summertime, lower activity, it makes these huge spikes a lot more difficult. Quite often a Nosek engagement can make that happen, or big speculation. But yeah, a lot of speculation, if there's not a lot of players, that doesn't rhyme either. So overall, you know, I'm definitely looking to buy at the right time. I think that's important. Right here, for instance, Guardian, you can buy at 180, sell at 200 million. So that means that you can probably get a small profit on this right now. And with a bit of patience, I'm definitely hoping to be able to sell well above 200 million, but we will see. Then we've got the Hound that's actually staying at that above average range, hovering around 30 million, 31 for the sellers, 25 million for the buyers. It's a decent margin, but I would clearly wait for more pressure before I would jump in on this one. Ichthyorsa for Triglavian, that is a bit of a surprise that we see such a big pullback all of a sudden in 1 month time from 900 million down to 700 million, 760 for the sellers, 681 for the buyers. Here, SummerSlam probably part of the reason as well. Look at that demand, or that volumes dropping off quite substantially here. I don't think it's a supply thing. Then we've got the Ishtar. So this is my trade, 206 for the sell, 221 for the buy. At the moment we're selling for 235 million, so I probably sold a little bit too early, but buyers at 212, so no way that you can jump in at the moment. But yeah, this was the bounce that I took advantage of. And if you look at this chart and then you look at the Cerberus, kind of looks like it could be this one that just happened for the Ishtar, or it could be that the Ishtar just did this right here. So it's interesting. It's definitely active in the Tech 2 market. There's is to be made in there, as I think I'm showing right here, but buying at the right time, super important. With the Manticore still hovering at 30 million, we're talking 31.5 for the sellers, 26 for the buyers. Definitely still too early for me here as well. Then we've got the Munin, all right, back below 200 million as well on the charts. Volumes are abysmal though. We're talking 206 for the sellers and 185 for the buyers, but this starts to look pretty good. Look at the lack of demand compared to the supply. Look at the jump down. We're probably a couple of days too late. Right here, for instance, you can see at the peak of the daily averages declining. We got an average price down here. Let's take a quick look at if I can get that to show up, of around 180, probably a little bit above that. But then those buyers will have easily grabbed some of these. So you could definitely try to buy a cheap Munin at the moment with that one warning, very low volumes. So I would never risk more than one ship at a time. Nemesis still bouncing up from 25 million, so that's a no for me. It's 26.4 for the sellers and 23 million for the buyers. But yeah, I would say get rid of all of these. Look at buyers below 20. That's when you want to jump in. So we're not there yet. And I'm still trying to buy that Oneros, and it's still going down, which is pretty good news on the one hand, but there's still heavy competition on this one. 178 million for the sellers, 170 million for the buyers, and I'm trying to buy for 165 after taxes. I'm not sure which one of these is, probably this one or something. That's going to be my buy order then, although that looks like it's a little bit fresh. Maybe it's even this one. I'm not exactly sure which one it is, but you can see that the buy pressure is already mounting, and it's either we see a lot of supply and then my buy order could still trigger, or right, we see a little bit of profit taking right away, and then you also see we don't need that many in buys to get back up to the 187 million mark. So yeah, maybe this one won't work out on the buy orders, but it's the last one that's remaining. I got everything else that I put the buy orders for, so looking pretty good. A little bit of pressure on the Oneros. You could risk it right now, right? If you want to be a little bit more aggressive than me, try just to buy just above 170. Potentially you are looking at a good trade there as well. Then we've got the Panther. All right, a little bit what I was expecting. This is of course the CCP buff spike up well above 1.75 billion. But for the Black Ops battleships, much more niche, not PvE related. We got a very quick recovery. We're back down to 1.5 billion for the sellers, 1.25 billion for the buyers. So this is clearly going to, in my opinion, just get right back on track with the normal price. Then we've got the Purifier still above 30. No, actually a little bit below that at the moment, but 31 for the sellers, 25 for the buyers. Still 25 for the buyers. You could risk it, but yeah, I would wait for a better opportunity personally. Then we've got the Scimitar climbing back above 200 million. 213 for the sellers, 182 still for the buyers. Yeah, probably a little bit late here again, right at the when it's going down, when we're being oversupplied, that's when your buy orders can trigger. 190. Now that we're going back up, it's a lot harder to actually catch any of these cheap scimitars, but you could still consider it, in my opinion. 182, if you can stay below 185, I don't think you're necessarily making a bad purchase. Then we've got the Widow, Black Ops again. This one recovered even more quickly. It's a little bit of a premium, but yeah, with the April changes and with the Marauder buffs, these became more expensive. 1.5 billion for the sellers, 1.35 billion for the buyers. So super, definitely expensive, but no maintaining of that buffed price due to the CCP announcement. And then finally the Zealot, that's also starting to move up. So if 10 days ago you would have bought, you could have easily bought one below 200 million by quite a bit. 196.5 now for the buyers, 230 for the sellers. But yeah, on the upswing, I think you have to be more aggressive in order to actually get a buy order to trigger. So overall, the Tech 2 market, it's interesting. I do think there are buy opportunities, but with the summer slump happening, I would personally always wait for the very best opportunities before pulling the trigger. I would need to see charts like this and where those buy orders, right, coming in now at 212 are definitely playing with the low points that we've seen before, because you know, you're less likely to see the very big spikes when there's less activity, when there's less speculation, and when the war is not doing that hot at the moment. So that's take two, and yeah, what I'm still holding, I'll quickly cover that at this point as well. I'm still holding a Confessor that I bought for 35 million, so here we're looking at a little bit of profit. I'm kind of hoping we can get back above 45 on that one. Definitely willing to hold on to it. Then we've got an Endurance that I bought for 19.5, clearly early, right, because here demand is dropping off. But looking at the chart, right, we are definitely at the very low end of things. I bought below 20 million. Eventually that should pay off. And I bought the Guardian for 185. 200 million now. Could look for a little bit of profit, but as I've said, I'll wait for a price well above 200 million, which should be possible. Then we've got the Kitsune. Oh man, let's see what's happening here. All right, I managed to buy one at 20.5 million after taxes, so that's not bad, and it's now selling for 37 million. So if I can get a good sell price here, that's something that I should definitely do. Apparently someone bought a lot of them or something. I'm not exactly sure where the hell are they, but that's very, very nice. Then we've got the Manticore, which I bought for 27 million. You can get very close to that, 31 small profit, but I'm waiting for a better opportunity. Another Prospect bought for 21. Again, I was obviously early, but look at this chart. The turnaround may be happening, and the potential of 25 million, in my opinion, does definitely exist. So those are my holdings. Managed to make a couple of trades, and then the buy order, still trying to grab that Oniros. Let's move on to the Tech 3 ships coming in at 49.55. Like that. So here is the Confessor, which we hinted at just a moment ago. Still under pressure, but 42 million for the sellers and 37 million for the buyers, with, this is the important bit, supply in the last 24 hours a single ship. So we may be looking at a bottom here or maintaining that. It'll of course depend on what's happening in the others. We've got the Hecate slowly moving back up here, 5-day moving average above the 20-day moving average, and this at a price of 47 million for the sellers, 41 million for the buyers. A little bit more demand, but still it's only 2 sell orders in the last 24 hours. So I do think this is the first indication that the Confessor will hopefully go back higher. Let's see if the Jackdaw is like the culprit or something like that. Maybe on supply wise, but then not good news price wise. We're heading for 40 million on the chart, 42 million for the sellers, 37 million for the buyers, and last 24 hours no supply either. So this one is not good news for hoping for a better sell price for the Jackdaw. Is it the Svepel then that did go up well above 50 million? Yeah, it is the Svepel. All right, this is what's happening. 51 million for the sellers. I was obviously, so if I go for my completed trades here, I bought this Svepel at 41, sold at 44.5. If I had held on longer, I could have done double the trade on that. 51 million for the sellers now and 44 million for the buyers. This is clearly the culprit as to why all of the supply is gone, and that would then be good news again, because even here we don't see that many Svepels coming to the market that quickly on a price spike that happened 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 days ago. So I'm saying lower activity is making it harder for massive supplies to crunch these spikes, and that should give Confessor, Hecate and Jackdaw a little bit of breathing room. Let's take a look at that. 37.6 million, or definitely buying below 40 million ISK. Maybe a Jackdaw could be on the menu for a buy as well, looking at all of this, but the Svepel chart is starting to go down, next to zero supply in the other cruisers. This could change very quickly, so I would still be very careful on all of this. But yeah, the Svepel is basically what's causing the lack of supply in Confessor, Hecate, and then the Jackdaw that's actually crashing back down is seeing none in the last week or so. So the market is definitely taking a breather, saying hold on, are we gonna crash everything to 40 million? I don't think so. Yeah, be careful here. I would say on supply in the waiting, it could definitely happen. Wormhole activity is actually still pretty high, so we will see. But this is interesting. An unexpected Svepel spike has drawn in all the supply, and despite the pressure here, Hecate's starting to go back up, and then of course that Jackdaw really coming back down, but that's to be expected when you're selling for almost 50 million compared to all the others. Then we've got the cruisers. Here is the Legion. Of course, CCP announcement spike happened as they are announcing that they're going to get rid of the SP skill point penalty on getting your Tech 3 cruiser blown up. So this brought the Legion is now at 213 for the sellers, 202, so well above 200 million all of a sudden. And here now, definitely not a place to take gambles, I would say, since that may be here to stay. Then we've got the Loki, went up to 230 million, bit of pressure on that one, back down to 198 for the sellers and 180 for the buyers. But as I've said, I would not be gambling on these at the moment. Then we've got the Proteus, well above 200 million and staying there, 212 for the sellers, 187 for the buyers. And then the Tengu also trying to hold on to 200 million, just shy of that, 198 for the sellers and 184 for the buyers. At the moment, for Tech 3 cruisers, I would say buy what you plan to use, because of course that penalty being gone will make them a lot less risky to actually go out there and fly. I think I can fly the Legion and the Proteus. So next up on the menu for me, Tengu PvE ships. I think that would make a lot of sense to me personally. And then finally, we've got the extra product for the week, which I got a bit of a request for some gas, and it could be interesting, of course, in the new industry changes. 5440 for some gas product. Still not sure about making that a regular part of the show, because, well, we're already pushing an hour with what we've got. And if we go for manufacturing materials, gas cloud materials, there's quite a lot of them, so that would become another very big part of Eve Talk, and I don't know if I want to go to like 1.5 hours or something like that, but we'll see. Let's get started here with the booster gas clouds. I think some of these are needed in the new industry processes, so we do have massive volume spikes, but pressure on the price in the last couple of months after April. This to me is in line with expectations. So Amber Cytoceracin, you can see here back to the yearly average, or the year start, you could say, below 100,000 disc. Yeah, 90,000 for the sellers, 25 for the buyers. This is going to be that double effect, right? You've got the spike in April up to 200,000 disc on the announcement of all the industry changes, but what happens, everyone rushed into it, so a lot less demand all of a sudden for industry, although we're seeing higher volumes. Oh, new supplies also coming online from CCP. They didn't want this to just become completely crazy or impossible to get. And now, of course, summertime is coming, and thus we actually have overall a stable end on this 1 year chart. Let's see if this is becoming a trend. Well, Amber Miko Ceracin actually able to maintain a very decent premium. Started the year at very low price, probably 1600 disc. Currently selling for 28,000 and buyers at 25,000. That's clearly a premium with the industry changes that is here to stay. Azure Cytoceracin back at a 50k, so this one is back at its previous price. Azure one, up to 25k. This one has a premium, so those that some of them that were like overabundant or really not needed before are seeing these big volume changes with the industry changes and have a very nice premium all of a sudden. And those that were actually already worth 100k or something like that, that saw those uses, they jumped up together with that, but are basically going back down to those average prices. Celadon Microceracin, here is the premium again on this one with the industry spike up to 130,000 ISK, 42,000 for the sellers, 38,000 for the buyers. That's definitely pretty decent, and look at these volumes. So for those that are worried that there is like no industry happening, a chart like this, these volumes should show you that, well, despite how much harder it's become to make some of those really big ships, it's still happening, right? Players in Nullsec want them. They are now, rather than being like throwaway ships or, I think ratting ships. I don't think people are doing a lot of super ratting anymore at this point. They're more strategic, high value assets that are there to defend your home against others that have put them in the efforts of making them. Now, there's the legacy problem. I fully understand that, but I do think that this is the goal from CCP. Make it very hard, very expensive, and make making it tighten is now once again, in my opinion, an alliance activity, something that the alliance decides to do because you gotta get stuff from all over the place or pay a very, very big price. And it is happening though. Looking at these volumes, it is definitely happening. And then you get some that are not needed. This one actually still able to stay at 100,000 discs, pretty impressive. Yep. Is that really what's the demand is nowhere to be seen, but then those that are used in the industry processes, they very clearly have that big premium. Very nice actually, these charts, look at the difference between these, right? Bigger volumes. Ooh, this one, malachite, seems to be very easily supplied. 27,000 for the sellers, 18,000 for the buyers. Pretty much the price range at the start of the year. So despite the higher volumes, not able to make that many gains, but it's very noticeable once you get something like that, that the industry does happen. And finally, Viridian, yeah, starts the year. Let's get a low point here. 10,000 disc, currently selling for 40,000 disc, 4x the price. But the spike, the peak of it in April is definitely, past at this point. And I think it is the summer slump, which at this point here, with a little bit of hype, may have been underestimated by the market. Since we're doing gas products anyway, we'll take a quick look at the fullerenes as well. So here is the C28 fullerite, pretty stable, a little bit of a spike here in April as well, but overall back at like 7,700 disc range, 5.8 for the buyers. We'll quickly go through this C32, actually pretty low at the moment, 1 year low point. Then we've got C320 below average, C50, 5,000 disc above average. C540, a little bit of volatility in this one from 40k to 60k, but overall decent price, but nothing too special. C60 to 500, April spike, very noticeable, but overall pretty stable. And then again, fullerite C70 fully recovered, C72, 7500 slightly above average. Yeah, nothing special to report in the fullerenes, to be honest. A little bit of, I think, speculation in April on gas rising across the board, but all of that for the fullerene seems to have fully recovered. So that's it for gas as well, and that means that that's it for this EVE Talk. Thank you very much for watching, guys, and as always, I'll see you next time.